Let's talk about feeling discouraged. Those times when life isn't going the way that you want it to, when maybe you're not as far along as you thought you should be, or when things aren't happening the way you expected them, and you're feeling kind of frustrated about that, you're feeling down about that. We're going to talk about what we can do when you are feeling this way, and 5 things that are going to be important for you to remember so that you can get yourself unstuck from feeling quite so discouraged and be able to get back up and keep going and keep moving forward and keep learning and growing and expanding, because that is such a big point of why we are here in the first place. I think you're going to get a lot out of these. They are ones that have really helped me when I felt kind of down and discouraged, and have just helped me get back up. So, looking forward to sharing them with you. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, say hello. Really love being able to connect with all of you and love seeing the conversations that you all are having with each other down in the comment section as well. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, that you can get more information about in the description as well. You want to come and be a part of that community with us. It is incredible, and the people in there, incredible. I help heart center go-getter people break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And it can be really tough to like yourself and your life when you're feeling discouraged, when you're feeling stuck, when things are not going the way that you want them to go. So I'm going to talk to you about a few tools that you can use and a few mindset shifts that are going to be really helpful to get you unstuck and get you moving forward again, so that you can be learning and growing and expanding and experiencing the life that you want in the short time that we're here. The first thing that I want you to be really mindful of, if you are feeling stuck, if you are stuck in kind of the overwhelm stage where you're like, there's so much to do and I just can't do it all. I don't know where to start. As soon as I look at everything that needs to get done, I get completely overwhelmed and then I don't do anything. And this is a bit of perfectionist brain, this whole kind of made up idea that the only way to move forward is to do it all and to do it all fast. And then, of course, that kind of feels terrible, all this pressure and all these expectations. And so then we just get stuck and don't do anything. So there's a very simple antidote to that one. And your brain, especially if you're an overfunctioner or a perfectionist, your overfunctioning perfectionist brain is going to hate this. But I want to invite you to do less. Do less. Do less, but do less consistently. And do so much less that the amount that you end up doing has to be something that feels easy, or at least not that hard to do. So your brain's not going to put up all of this resistance thinking that I can't possibly do this all, so I'm going to do nothing. So then just let yourself do something. A little bit, because a little bit consistently is way more effective than doing nothing ever. It's not rocket science, but it's so funny how when we have these expectations that we should do this all and achieve this all and accomplish this all, and we should have even maybe have done so much by now. So then we're sitting in that regret and we're judging and criticizing ourselves for having not done it, which makes it even more unlikely that we're going to do anything. Do less. Do it consistently. It's not go big or go home. It's go small to moderate and make it sustainable and doable. And then the next thing to remember when you're feeling discouraged is that the only place that you can be is where you are right now. Now, this might sound totally obvious. Of course, Julia, I can't be anywhere other than where I'm at now, but we do this as human beings. We spend a lot of our time in the future, thinking about the future, trying to control the future, trying to anticipate the future, trying to get to the future as quickly as possible. Or maybe even more commonly, we spend a lot of time in the past, feeling guilty about the past, regretting the past, overthinking the past. And when we are doing that, we are preventing ourselves from being able to be present and be able to move forward. This is something that comes up often for people when they start learning the tools in the Shift Society, when they start going through the process that I teach in there, and they start being able to feel more in charge of their minds and emotions and ultimately their lives, when they start feeling better and liking themselves more and having healthier relationships and showing up differently in life and creating the life that they want. There's this moment that a lot of them experience where they start to regret the fact that they hadn't learned this stuff sooner. They start thinking back to the years of their lives that they have lost to struggling with whatever it is that they've been struggling with. And so there is this grieving process of, I wish that I had known this sooner. I could have had different for however many years. I could have had better for however many years. And it's completely normal to grieve what could have been in the past. That's a normal human experience, and there's nothing wrong with feeling sad about it, being able to say, I'm sad that I didn't know this sooner, that I didn't have the awareness, the tools, the understanding, the resources, the support. It's completely normal to feel sad about that. However, sitting and blaming ourselves and regretting and beating ourselves up and hating on ourselves for not being able to do something that we didn't even know was available to do, that we couldn't have done, no matter what it is in your life. Sitting down and regretting the past. It's a normal thing to grieve the past, but to beat yourself up over the past is going to keep you stuck because you're spending all your time and energy hating yourself for what you did or didn't do, instead of being focused on, present with, and intentional about what you are doing now, because that is what you can manage. That is what you have say over. That is what you can do about it. And the next thing to remember when you are feeling discouraged, and just as a side note, when I say this one, it might feel like a bit of a punch in the gut. I know it did for me the first time that I understood this concept, but it was also one of the most valuable things that I've ever learned. And that is that just because you want something, it doesn't mean that the world owes it to you. And so often we think, just because I have a desire for this thing, for this success, for this relationship, for things to go this way, I should be able to get it. And maybe it's not even a conscious thought. I know for me, it wasn't a conscious thought until I found myself working towards something and it wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to. It wasn't easy as I thought it should be. It wasn't coming together as simply as I expected it to. And I felt entitled. I felt entitled to get a result that I wanted just because I really wanted it and I was willing to put in a little bit of effort. But life never promised that it would give us what we want just because we wanted it. It also didn't promise that we would get to what we really want, that we would be able to have the things that we want and create the life that we want and be feeling how we want to be feeling and creating the success that we want to create with a little bit of effort and a lot of enthusiasm. More often than not, when we want something, it takes continuous, intentional effort. Maybe you don't have to break your back. I'm not saying that you have to get out there and you have to, blood, sweat, and tears until you get what and where you want in your life. But it doesn't just happen just because we want it. We're not entitled to any results just because we want them badly. But the chances are pretty good that if we are willing to continue to show up, to continue to do the work, to continue to be intentional and put our attention on the things we want the most, we will be able to move in that direction. And I'm not saying that it can't be hard sometimes. I'm not saying it can't be super discouraging. I remember I've talked a little bit before about my journey to get into grad school and to become a therapist and how much time it took me and how hard it was for me to just get into grad school. And then I finally got there and I finally felt like, okay, I'm here, I'm doing this. Now I'm going to become a therapist. And then now I'm going to have all the options of all the great jobs, whatever I want, because I have paid my dues. I have worked so hard already. And life is like, that's not the way that it works. You don't just get to do some and then think that you're going to coast for the rest of it. There's the next step, the next process. Yes, you're going to go to grad school, but there aren't that many jobs for people graduating with masters in counseling psychology. And at least there aren't that many decent jobs, and the competition is going to be high. And you don't just get to get the job just because you have a degree. There's other criteria there. So I remember learning this, and luckily I learned this, early enough. I got out of my sort of delusional cloud of entitlement that there was just going to all be smooth sailing from here. And I sat down and went to work to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get a job working in a good job with a good organization, working with people that I want to be working with, working on issues that I want to be helping people with. Okay, what is it going to take? And then I spent the next 6 months to a year volunteering and networking and connecting and applying and following upping and all of the things until I got a position, I got what I wanted. And then even from there, it's not just that okay, I got this job and now it's smooth sailing. Then it was, okay, what do I want for the next stage of my life? And just sort of understanding that learning and growing and expanding are always going to be a part of our existence if we want to have a rich and rewarding experience in life, that human beings were built to learn and to grow and to experience and to expand. And because of that, there's always going to be some tension. There's going to be times of periods of rest, and we are going to spend some time coasting, right? Of course, there's seasons for rest, there's seasons for coasting, there's seasons for just taking a step back and being, and then there's seasons for growing, for showing up, for working, for putting in effort, for participating, and just knowing that that's just the way that it is. And I think when we really just understand that to create the life that we want is going to take intentional, consistent effort over time, then when it does, it's not as hard because we're expecting it. When we kind of know that this is what's required, then it's not this rude awakening, and there's not so much resistance, because they're like, oh, this is just what it takes. I'm not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with me that things aren't coming super easily. This is just what it takes. And moving into this place of acceptance means that we are removing the resistance, and it actually does make it easier, and it makes it happen faster. A little bit. I mean, obviously you're not just going to go sliding through, but it is going to make it easier. The next thing to remember when you're feeling discouraged is this right here, this mass, 8-pound mass? 8 pounds, 6 pounds? I can't remember. This brain of ours is actively working against us. It thinks it's working for us, but more often than not, when it thinks it's working for us, it's actually working against us, meaning that the human brain, science shows that it has a natural negative bias. So our brain is always looking for the downside. It's looking for the danger. It's looking for the threat. We actually just have to work on our brains to get it to a state of neutral. And now I say that it's not super helpful in most of the things that we're doing in our lives, most of the things that we're taking on, most of the ways that we are interacting with life, most of the ways we're just when we're going through our everyday lives, just existing. This negative bias isn't super helpful. It thinks it's being helpful because it thinks it's anticipating everything that could go bad, maybe everything that's bad about you, maybe everything that, any threat, right? It's trying to protect you. It's trying to preserve you. It's trying to keep you alive. Because if you were just sort of skipping through life thinking that everything was great and wonderful and there was no problems ever, then, maybe you'd walk into a forest, find some berries and be like, oh, those are wonderful, beautiful berries. If they're beautiful, they must be delicious. So I am going to eat them. And then, well, chances are that's not going to go so well. So our brain has this negative bias to be skeptical, to take a step back, to assess, I don't know about this. Is this okay? Is this going to be safe? Is this a good idea? So it's there to protect us. But where it's not helpful is with most of the things that we are doing in our lives are not an actual potential threat to our lives. They might be a little bit uncomfortable. They might be a little difficult. We might have to make ourselves vulnerable. We might have to let ourselves be seen. We might have to let ourselves be open to criticism or judgment, but that is not a threat to your existence. So knowing that your brain has this bias, your brain is probably going to want to talk you out of things. When you have goals, when you have dreams, when you have plans, things that you're working on, things that you are building, there will be this negative bias that's going to come in. Are you sure you're cut out for this? Do you really think you can do this? What if it all fails? What are people going to think? This might be a terrible idea. To see what your brain is doing, see that your brain is trying to protect you, and let your brain know that you're actually okay, that you've got this, that you can handle some discomfort, you can handle some judgment, you can handle some failure, you can handle things not going perfectly, because you're not going to die if any of those things happen. The next thing to remember when you are feeling discouraged, this is such an important one, we do this all the time in the Shift Society, is to celebrate all wins. Perfectionist brain often tells us that it doesn't count unless it's monumental, unless it's the biggest deal, unless it's the best, unless it gets the gold star, unless it wins above all else. We're not allowed to celebrate. And I know I've struggled with this one so much that I don't let myself celebrate. I have these big ideas and big goals and big dreams and big plans, and I forget to let myself celebrate the little things along the way. I forget to let myself just acknowledge myself for the courage it took, for the grit it required, for the consistency I was able to give, for the determination I showed, for the effort that I put in. Even if it's a little bit, even if the result is a little bit, even if the win is a little bit, even if the shift is a little bit, celebrate it, acknowledge it, be proud of yourself for it. Because the thing is, when we don't do that, then we are less likely to want to try things, to show up, to build, to grow, to expand, to experience, because it doesn't feel as good as it could, right? If you had a small child and they came to you and they were like, oh, look at this little Lego figurine or whatever that I built. And you were just like, yeah, whatever, it could have been better. But did you actually construct an entire house yet? You haven't built a house. That's just Lego. That doesn't count. Come back to me when you have, designed, framed, constructed an entire 4-bedroom house. That child's going to feel pretty discouraged and probably maybe even not want to build Lego houses anymore. Instead of acknowledging that and be able to say, hey, that's amazing. Good for you. How does that feel? What was that like to put in that effort and then to be able to have this result, to be able to see this thing in front of you, experience this growth, this shift. Celebrate everything is going to make it so that you are going to want to keep going, because it feels good when you grow. It feels good when you win. It feels good when you shift. It's not rocket science. It's just human behavior. We do more of behaviors that are rewarded and less that are punished. The next thing to remember when you're feeling discouraged is that you can't criticize yourself into feeling good. So interesting how often we do this when we are struggling, when we have failed, when something didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, when maybe even we said something that we didn't mean to say. We judge ourselves, we criticize ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we scrutinize ourselves. But that's not actually a catalyst for positive behavior change. Now, I'm not saying to put your head in the cloud and be like, oh my gosh, it's no problem. There's no problems ever. Everything I do is fine. Life is fine. Everything's fine. It's good. It's all good. I'm not saying that, because that's just a way of bypassing life and preventing ourselves from having learning opportunities. But we use our missteps, we use our mistakes, we use our failures as things to grow from, as opportunities to learn from. And so if something happens the way that I didn't want it to happen, if I could sit and beat myself up about it, I could sit and feel terrible about it, and then I'm just going to stay stuck doing that. Or I could look at it and be like, hey, not my finest moment, not my best performance, not what I was expecting would happen, not what I wanted to happen. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to learn from this? What am I going to take from this? And then I get unstuck. Then I am able to move forward. But if I'm sitting around in a bunch of self-hatred, self-flagellation, that's the only thing that I'm going to be doing. So you can't judge and criticize and hate yourself into learning and growing, expanding and moving. Many of us have really not good relationships with ourselves. I'm going to say it flat out. We have bad relationships with ourselves. We have unhealthy relationships with ourselves because of years of being a-holes to ourselves, years of being terrible to ourselves, years of criticizing and judging, blaming and berating ourselves. It's really hard then to trust ourselves because it's really hard to trust someone who is always so cruel to us, always so unkind to us, always so critical and judgmental of us. It's hard to trust someone who treats us that way, and therefore it's hard, impossible to trust ourselves because of how we treat ourselves. So learning how to build self-trust it's a practice of learning how to be better to ourselves in several different ways. And in order to do that, I have a step-by-step guide, the steps to self-trust. You can get that. It is in the description below. Get access to that, those key steps to building a more trusting relationship with yourself that also includes how to talk to and treat yourself, how to respond to yourself when things aren't going the way that you want them to, when you're feeling down, depleted, and discouraged. That guide's going to be really helpful, really shifting, life shifting for that. You can get that in the description. Also get on the waitlist for the Shift Society for when we open up registration again. The link to that is in there as well. Always good to have you here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you like the video, like it. If you think other people would find this helpful, share it with them, and then let me know if you share it so that I can thank you, because that means a lot to me. Always good to have you here. Until next time, take good care.